Welcome to the Edozo Property Podcast, bringing you insight and inspiration from thought leaders in commercial property and technology. We hope you enjoy the show.
Today I have the pleasure of speaking with one of the most highly decorated and respected surveyors in the property industry, Bola Abisogun OBE. Bola is an independent management consultant, chartered surveyor and fellow of the RICS, and a chartered construction manager. He has successfully delivered in excess of £8 billion of capital projects during his 28-year career. Bola is currently working at the forefront of digital transformation in the infrastructure and construction industry as an ambassador and member of the Gemini Council at the Centre for Digital Built Britain, a government joint venture between BEIS and Cambridge University's Gemini programme, responsible for delivering the National Digital Twin programme. Via his new venture, AIQS, Bola is focused specifically on creating digital twins in professional services and has developed a specific use case for the social housing sector. He is also the founder and chairman of DiverseCity Surveyors, who along with thought leadership offer culturally competent support services and CPD training to surveyors from the Black, Asian and minority ethnic community who are either aspiring or current members of the RICS across the globe. Bola has endured a colourful and challenging journey and remains a huge advocate for increasing ethnic diversity in construction and real estate, and was awarded an OBE by the Queen in 2019 for his services to diversity and to young people in the construction industry. Bola, it is a privilege to have you on the podcast, and welcome.
Thank you, James. Thanks for the opportunity and the kind invitation.
Bola, you have a really diverse career, and I'd love to start with just asking you just a brief history of you and your career and how you came to the construction industry.
Well, it's a great question. I'm actually first generation construction in my family, so no previous real connections. It's been a journey of exploration, to say, from start to finish. I actually started out in my late teens carrying the hod on a building site, so serving up mixed mortar and bricks for bricklayers who were building all kinds of things, mainly during the summer and the Easter break. But that was my start. And then I evolved into a jobbing builder, carrying out all kinds of repairs and maintenance for ad hoc jobs that were commissioned by family and friends. So, it was against my parents' best wishes too. So they had huge plans for me to become a lawyer or an accountant, but I just thought that was too dry. I love construction. I love Lego. And therefore my career in construction was almost ordained from a very young age. So yeah, I'm first generation, but enjoying it.
Nice. And your specific focus as a chartered surveyor, was that on the quantity surveying side first?
It was actually. It was a few people, including my late godfather, who said that my capacity for skills in mathematics and my love for technology, construction technology, kind of pushed me in the direction of surveying. And then my debating skills, the legal side of things, just translated into quantity surveying. And I was actually on a building site. I saw the main contractor feverishly tidying up the site on a Friday for a visit from an individual. And this individual who turned up sharp suit, clipboard, walking around making notes. And it turns out he was the quantity surveyor doing the valuation. I thought, well, actually, that's what I want to do. So my introduction was quite unique, but it was based around my early introduction on site as a hod carrier.
Oh, great. And at what point did digital transformation become part of your focus? And how is technology in your mind transforming your work and your industry?
I think essentially it was the midpoint of my first degree. So we're talking 92, 93, when I was being challenged by my professors to identify my chosen area for my thesis. And I've always been a geek, tech fan, love computers, love gaming, and began to challenge my own thinking around what technology could do to enhance the role of the cost manager, quantity surveyor. And I embarked upon my thesis in 93, talking about neural networks, expert systems, artificial intelligence and machine learning in construction claims management. And that was in 93, 94. Subsequently, I got a first class honours for the genius idea that they thought at the time. But yeah, that was my introduction to the power and influence of technology in surveying specifically, but wider beyond the confines of the construction industry. So yeah, at least 29 years ago, I saw the light.
So you were a true early adopter then from the beginning?
Well, actually, they called me the mad scientist, and some still do, because it was very kind of embryonic in thinking. A lot of people were challenged by, is this ever going to happen? That was followed by the Y2K problem. I've been here for a long time, and I've been patiently waiting for the industry to evolve, which has now happened, thankfully, on the back of the pandemic. So I'm excited now.
And you're doing some really interesting work with Cambridge University, as an ambassador member of the Gemini Council. Can you chat a bit about that? It's a really fascinating project, and I'm sure our listeners would be quite keen to hear about the work you're doing there.
Okay, so the National Digital Twin, which is the government's attempt to digitize all of its assets above and below ground, mostly from an assurance asset management perspective. I got involved with them through an introduction. One of their core members was a participant on one of my webinars in June 2020. I was connected to the exec team at CDDB. We had a conversation, and through that conversation, they invited me to join their team to develop what is now called the Digital Twin Toolkit, which essentially is the ground zero for everyone to understand their role and the relevance of the National Digital Twin. And out of that process and that relationship and that association, all kinds of things have happened, including me becoming a bit of an evangelist for the business case for a digital twin. And there are so many different types of digital twin. But essentially, I'll give you the most simplest form of definition, which is, a digital twin is essentially a digital representation of an asset, system, or a process. And I wrote my first process-level data twin as part of my thesis in 1994, to give you some context. But most people don't go beyond the confines of digital twins and asset management and BIM models and all that sort of thing. But digital twins are data-driven solutions that can just empower clients and individuals to make better informed decisions. And that really is the crux behind the power of the digital twin.
And your specific focus, you talked about how useful digital twins can be in the social housing industry. Could you touch on why you've chosen to focus there when there's obviously multiple other asset classes?
Well, first of all, one of the things that has really challenged me in my career and the fact that the industry hasn't really adopted technology in the way that it could is because largely the broker model works, right? And if it's not broken, as they say, don't fix it. We have an inherently broken model in construction / real estate / decision-making. And data is a solution, but data is not shared. It can't be shared. We've got interoperability issues. We've got all kinds of issues around data. And then we've got a skills issue and an understanding issue and a cultural issue. But think about the role of Internet of Things in buildings, for example, and the fact that if you overlay a building with an IoT architecture, just contextualize it for heating and cooling, the relationship between the digital model and the physical building and the data flows between those two essentially is your digital twin. And through that information and data, you can optimize the building and the use of energy. That energy use case, I've taken / using the net zero carbon challenge and addressing fundamentally head on the post-Grenfell Tower tragedy and the Dame Hackett review of building safety. I'm using that use case to now look at the lowest common denominator of society, where if we get it right, we can create the greatest value proposition and basically deliver better societal outcomes for the widest population group across the country. And that is why my use case in social housing has blown quite a few people away. But the reality is I'm addressing a legislative requirement by the Building Safety Bill and an ESG requirement by the Net Zero Challenge in an asset class that is largely undervalued, for want of a better term.
Absolutely. And I suppose undervalued in the sense is that on its societal importance, right? It's the societal importance is massive of that social housing. We'll call it an asset class or sector. And to what extent is the government supportive of the digital transformation and the process of creating digital twins for government or social housing assets?
I think for me, the Centre for Digital Build Britain is a joint venture between Cambridge University and BASE government department. And the business case for CDBD, as the acronym, was about using data for the public good. And the public good is about leveling up, essentially. So the business case is not only commercially driven, it's morally driven as well, which is the whole idea behind the Gemini principles, purpose, trust, and function of a digital twin. So when you think about the relevance in the social housing asset class, it's because largely the public purse is funding a huge chunk of that work and investment. And it's about return on investment over the longest possible whole life cycle of the asset. And to attach a data-driven digital solution to that asset class will enable asset owners to better manage and optimize those assets. And in the case of Grenfell Tower, identify when things go wrong. And the whole idea behind the Dame Hackett review is to, in speech marks, mandate and force asset owners to become accountable persons and duty holders so that they can evidence their administration of their assets. And this is not just unique to the public sector. This is the private sector BTR PRS issue as well for the long-term asset holders. So why I'm focusing on public sector housing is because we get it right in the public sector. The private sector will be all over it. And then there's the international dimension, which is just scaling up the use case that, again, is addressing and creating value at the lowest common denominator. So it's an interesting time to be working in that space and to be extolling the benefits of what data and technology can really do.
Yeah. Your new venture, AIQS, could you tell us a bit about that and how it ties into things we've just been talking about?
I've got the mandate. I'm a bit of a disruptor, so people call me. And there's good and bad in that, but I'm a positive disruptor. So I'm challenging my profession, working in conjunction with the RICS, and have been for about 10 years on this. And in the last 5 years, we've come up with a plan of action to literally articulate what the vision should look like for chartered surveyors in cost management. And it's called PQS 2030. AIQS is an idea I've had for 18 years. And I've been patiently waiting for the market, for the clients, for surveyors and other stakeholders to get their head around the value created by using artificial intelligence and machine learning in professional services, aka digital twins. So AIQS, the secret's in the name, artificial intelligent quantity surveying, is an attempt to leverage data to make more impactful, timely recommendations, statements, observations, clarifications, and provide seasoned advice to clients using data and technology that is already out there in the ether, but in an unstructured fashion.
Yeah, well, that sounds super interesting. And at Edozo, we have a challenge as well of getting proper structured data to make sure that we can provide the right transaction evidence to our community. On the topic of data, it is a general problem, isn't it? Is not having structured data to feed these models. Is that a factor in the work that you do?
James, to be honest with you, that is at the very core. In actual fact, the whole idea of a digital twin is to embrace what we've developed and called the information management framework. And the information management framework is an attempt to standardize data sets, data models, transfer interoperability standards of data so that we can get as many participants using, contributing, challenging, checking and verifying the data that is used in various models for various use cases. I'm focusing on cost management, construction cost, asset management, carbon use, embodied carbon, etc. But there are thousands of data sets and use cases that can benefit from the whole concept and notion behind the digital twin. So it's a really interesting time. The challenge is the sector ready to understand and embrace this new way of thinking and working? Because collaboration, James, that we have never done well as a sector professional or otherwise, is at the root to any form of success. So we've got to be able to share accurate data that where we can challenge provenance and authenticity, and we've got to be able to collaborate. And that collaboration piece is the elephant in the room. But it's one that I'm willing to take bite-sized chunks out of it and get it right.
Yeah, and I think that the timing is perfect, right? There's clearly a move towards more and more digital transformation of everything in the property sector. I think the moment you can prove that, well, there's a safety element and there's a carbon reporting element as well. The big funds will have to be mandated to have that those sort of systems in place. But then at the other end, you've got creating better liquidity in the market, things that all stakeholders are always quite interested in improving the liquidity of commercial property, but also residential. And I imagine having a digital twin really speeds that up.
Yeah, that's a really exciting point you've made. In actual fact, I think previously I talked about the role of the automated valuation model and the fact that I believe, and I'm challenging the entire globe on this, to introduce a new asset class, because I have challenged many in my peer group, including, as you know, Samuel May from JLL. We've had a lovely conversation about this, and it was quite impactful for him. And what I was saying is that the role of the digital twin in valuation will disrupt the whole notion of valuation and concept of valuation, where we are typically valuing existing assets based on market comparables, etc. And what I'm saying is to take that valuation to the next degree of clarity and usefulness, embracing perhaps even the carbon efficiency footprint, etc., of the asset, potentially in real time, is you need to think about creating a digital equivalent of every asset that you value. And what you will find over time is that the digital equivalent of the physical asset could be and will be commoditized in a more meaningful way where clients will be deriving more value because they have more information, much more of a point in time representation of the value of that asset compared to a book value or comparable market driven value, if that makes sense. And this is where the digital twin and the power of data really becomes exemplified.
Wow. So it's almost like a real-time, it's a real-time asset that's got a real-time value.
It's insane.
Yeah, okay.
But that's where we're going. I mean, that's the value of the data that you will have at your disposal. If you have an asset that has been dysfunctional over time and you have no idea when the systems were last maintained or overhauled or failed or replaced or whatever the case is, you, via the twin, will have much more data to value, whether above and below the line, but to give the client a better perspective on exactly what this asset holds in terms of risk and value at any given point in time. And to go to that level of granularity and potentially commoditize the asset using tokenization, for example, on a blockchain platform. I mean, you're introducing a level of value creation that to date has been either misunderstood or missold. So the whole valuation process, in conjunction with Red and Green Book, is about to be disrupted.
I'm sure there's going to have to be a step change in the skills required of a valuer or surveyor or anyone working in industry to have to deal with such a technology. I mean, what sort of skills would you be encouraging a valuer to have? And maybe someone at the beginning of their career looking ahead for the next 10 years, they're thinking, well, what sort of skills am I going to need if I'm going to be valuing digital twins, or at the very least using them to inform my appraisal of value?
Fabulous question. And it's one that thankfully I'm already addressing with RICS. The skills piece, the digital skills piece is hugely lacking. But as I'm saying now to many young industry entrants, I'm saying you really need to think about picking up skills along the lines of data analytics and data science that give you an ability to look beyond what the numbers are telling you and an ability to interrogate what they could be telling you based on data flows that you may pull from API sources from other data sets, just to give you that level of granularity and assurance that you're in the right space. And you're actually building on the traditional skill set. And if I was to say it from this perspective, as a QS, PQS now, strategic advisor, I'm relying on potentially 30 to 40% of my traditional skill set. My evolving skill set is more about management consultancy, data science, digital twin formation, ontology assessment, ontology being the data creation models themselves, and different ways of using and leveraging data to inform decisions in a process that is largely analog, even in 2022. So, it's a data play, but it's data that's relevant to your core traditional technical skills. And the technical skills, whether you're a cost manager or a valuer, are actually being not displaced, but they're being usurped by the presence and capability of technology. So there is no point individuals like me trying to stay ahead of a machine learning algorithm that can consistently understand where value and money has changed over time, because that process has been automated quicker and more accurately than I could ever do. What I need to be doing is checking that the process and the algorithms are working correctly and issuing the right kind of data to give to clients. So our roles are changing, but they are being predicated on digital skills. And the digital skills piece it's like chalk and cheese. Some are fearful of what this skills piece could look like, is beginning to look like. And others are saying, more of the next generation is saying, actually, we're tech natives. We love it. We think this just makes sense. So we're getting a bit of a divide in the sector anyway. But I think it's healthy. And it needs to happen because we have had a shift, a digital paradigm shift that has never yet been witnessed by any man, woman, or child. And the challenge for us as seasoned professionals is to recognize the changes we have to make in order to add and continue to add value to our roles as advisors. And that's not negotiable. That's foundation.
This might sound naive, but does a digital twin exist for assets? Any assets that we would know of, or have they been built already and put into practice?
There are examples of amazing things happening across the world, James. There are many government projects happening. Some are very confidential. Some are going ahead, the public domain. We've got examples of cities beginning to embark upon high-level digital twins, mostly from a visual perspective. You've got traffic flow inventories. You've got drainage systems now being digitized. You've got key infrastructure assets that are being mined and converted But again, a point I should make here is that digital twin is driven by its purpose. So once you've identified a purpose, for example, a digital twin for valuation purposes is basically you're taking a visual model of the asset and then trying to interrogate it for value in terms of defects and whatever the case is. If you're trying to create a digital twin in healthcare, for example, you could be creating a digital twin purely of the ambulance movement, for example, to optimize journey time, to reduce carbon inefficiency. Are you with me? So the use cases are absolutely in perpetuity, but they're always driven by purpose.
Okay, yeah, fascinating. You talk about Grenfell. I used Grenfell as an example, and I suppose one of the use cases, especially in that context, is accountability. And I think you mentioned about reporting and making sure the administration of either a public asset or private assets being done properly. How could Grenfell have been avoided, as an example, by having something like a digital twin and a better reporting process in place?
That is my personal ambition. Apart from suffering personal loss, not too far from me in terms of knowing families that have suffered, the big error and embarrassment for me as a professional, recognizing what Grenfell Tower has and continues to expose as failings, is that had there been a digital twin of Grenfell Tower, even prior to the cladding process having happened, a lot of red flags would have been raised around fitness for purpose of some of those products. Post the cladding process, had the digital twin been created, it would have been very easy to identify data-linked association with products that were either banned or foul of regulation. And then on the dwellings themselves, understanding which dwellings had had work done or not, had had risks within them or not, recognizing that perhaps the stairwells were inadequately, all of these sensors that can be attached to buildings to provide different types of data would have been running algorithms in a real-time capacity. And potentially the challenge for the fire services, for example, would have been completely different. But because there was no intelligence in speech marks, i.e. there was no twinning of the physical asset, it was literally an opportunity for all manifestation of error and failure to take hold of the building faster than the human being could react. And that's unfortunately what we witnessed in June 2017. So again, it's just indicative of what the power of data can do. And the fact that if you have digital representations of physical assets that are informing you about what the asset is doing, you have much more opportunity to intervene and create the changes required, should they be required.
Well, it sounds like it should be a legal requirement at some point, wouldn't it, to have a digital twin for this purpose?
Well, I'm interpreting the government's mandate for building safety bill and the fact that the in speech marks golden thread requirement, which is the requirement to maintain digital data in a structured fashion, is becoming law very soon. And I would hope that mandation of the digital requirement for data becomes so widespread that technically, you by definition and default create a twin of every asset under asset management and under stakeholder management in terms of both public and private. This shouldn't be excluded to just public. This should also be included in the private sector. And I think the private sector have more to gain from introducing digital twins as part of their asset management strategy.
Wow. I mean, this topic, Bola, we can talk about for hours. And I think it's an amazing mission and an amazing part of the industry that you're involved in, and you're doing incredible work in it. But I really wanted to hear as well, because as on a parallel note, you're the chairman of DiverseCity Surveyors. I know you are a huge advocate for increasing ethnic diversity in real estate generally, and have, of course, been awarded by an OBE by the Queen in 2019 for your services to diversity and to young people. Could you tell us about the great work you're doing there, and just comment on whether we're doing enough as an industry to encourage ethnic diversity?
Well, thanks, James. And I'm still in shock about the award, to be honest with you. And it came as a shock. It's still a shock now. And it's extremely humbling, And I put all of that credit to my parents and all the young people that have allowed me to influence their journey. But essentially, DiverseCity Surveyors grew out of my frustration very early on in my career around lack of representation of people that look like me, particularly in senior positions, which is why I struck out on my own very early, literally the year after I qualified in 99. And since then, I've challenged the profession, I've challenged the RICS. They've come on board, we've done some amazing things. over the last 15, 20 years, it's still a very, very slow burn. We are still barely scratching the surface. But I'm optimistic because particularly in a post-George Floyd environment, I think there's more of an appetite to do something meaningful, not just tokenistic efforts. But yeah, I think, it's DiverseCity Surveyors for me was my contribution to the profession, to shine a light on the fact that there's a talent pool of individuals, male and female, who are fit, able and ready to contribute based on talent and not the color of their skin. So it's come at a price. I ruffle feathers as disruptors do. But I think the net effect after all of that work is that, particularly in the RICS, they now have a global commitment with us to drive diversity and inclusion across the profession, which is great. And the beneficiaries will be the next generation who are coming into a profession that's more inclusive, representative, and I think will allow them to thrive. Something that I wasn't able to do, but yet I'm doing so now with the work I'm doing in the technology space. And I think technology will also allow more diversity, because the whole notion of technology is an aspiration for a very diverse group of people. So if we are, as a profession, embracing technology and change culturally and representatively, we will diversify the profession. So the role of DiverseCity Surveyors should dissipate over time, which is why I'm now particularly interested in helping our RICS grow the thought leadership piece, which is, again, indicative of what we discussed for the last half hour. So yeah, I'm excited and I'm humble, James.
Yeah, well, it's an amazing venture, and we had Samuel from JLL and Sasha from JLL talking about diversity in the property industry, and they're really leading the way in the consultancy side with some of the policies that they're implementing, both at JLL, but going out to hire from different backgrounds. And I think that's part of the challenge is there's an educational piece for people who might disregard the industry when, the industry is now a place that's welcoming people from all backgrounds with open arms and trying to diversify the skill set, technology skills being one of them. So I think it's a really exciting time for that.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad that Samuel May is on the board of DiverseCity Surveyors. He's a great guy, great ally. And yeah, he too is, as young as he is, I'm saying he's still a future leader. So, I'm looking to support Sam and all the others that are willing to help just make the industry what it is and just continue to push and become better at what we do. But we do need to challenge ourselves. Let's be clear. This is not going to happen without effort and pain, but less pain and more effort.
Yeah. Bola, we normally finish off these episodes by asking, where are you at your happiest?
I think for me, happy places is kitchen and cooking. I find cooking therapeutic because they say you work hard, you play hard, but cooking is escapism for me. And my mother taught me well. So I love to cook and I love to eat.
Love that. Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Bola, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on here. The work that you are doing with digital twins is just fascinating. And I'm keen to make sure that you and I speak a lot more about it in the future, because it'll inform everything we do at Edozo and just the future of the profession generally. And then likewise with DiverseCity Surveyors, just you're doing great work out there. You put yourself out there and challenge and disrupt the industry, which I love. And so, yeah, it's been a great pleasure hearing from you and getting to know you, and just really look forward to doing more with you in the future.
I appreciate the invite, James. And yes, likewise, I've been inspired by what you're doing. And I think Edozo has huge potential. And if you really, truly embrace the concept of digital twins at Edozo, it may blow your mind. But yeah, I'm happy to help you blow your mind.
Would love that. Well, thank you, Bola, and we'll catch up soon.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Edozo Property Podcast. To find out more about Edozo, please visit edozo.com or follow us on LinkedIn or Twitter. Links are in the show notes.